Welcome to the Future of Field Service podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. On today's episode, we're sharing a session from the Stockholm stop of the Future of Field Service live tour. This session is with Roel Rentmeesters, who is the Vice President of Services for Munters. Roel has actually been on the podcast before discussing both their servitization journey, as well as how the company implemented remote assistance to aid in travel bans at the beginning of the pandemic. In this session, we talk about where things are today on both of those fronts, focusing on the role remote service plays in service delivery as an organization moves toward servitization. I hope you enjoy.
Hi. All right. So, Rule and I have had variations of this conversation many times, but it's always a pleasure.
It is.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to talk about kind of the balance of working toward innovation, a bigger vision of change, while meeting the demands of the present day business, okay?
Yep.
So tell everyone a bit about yourself, what you do, what Munters does, and then we'll get started.
Good. So I work for Munters. It's a Swedish company. We do climate solutions for mission critical processes. So everything that's related to humidity control and temperature control in critical environments is what we do. And of course, we try to do this in a sustainable way, meaning that the way our energy consumption, etc., for our units is controlled and help the customer in their processes. And I'm leading the services organization. It's been 5 years that I work for Munters. My background is, however, in IT, where I've done field service for the last 20 years. Which is actually good because the way IT has developed their service management from call centers and network operations centers and systems to control this is very standardized using ITIL. And I think there's a lot that we can apply from that IT industry in our manufacturing world.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I am in Munters, and it's really interesting.
Yes, okay. All right, so at Munters, there's this opportunity to servitize the business, okay, as there is for many manufacturers. Also, probably a fair bit of resistance to that amount of change. So when we talk about service transformation, I think, particularly for those who are in manufacturing looking to servitize the business, you're really talking about fundamentally like an identity change of the business, and that can be challenging. So how would you describe the opportunity for Munters to servitize, and what are some of the things that are driving that opportunity?
Yeah. I think servitization is fairly new in Munters compared to in other industries. We started, I would say, 7-8 years ago. I heard a colleague say in 2000 already. So we are quite new, and we have been really a traditional manufacturing company. So we build the big boxes in our factories, we sell them, and sales and service was a support organization. And that changed a bit, I would say, 2015 or just before that. The first thing we did was change the service organization. So where before it was residing into the BUs and it was pure support, we moved it into a separate business area. And that really made a transformation happen. So separate sales from the service organization so that they don't abuse each other, and started that revenue generation in service. It was quite successful, and we are still quite successful in it. So we have like 15% growth in the last years for service, but still mainly in our traditional services. So it is the commissioning, it is a break and fix, it is a preventive maintenance, and particularly the upgrades. So how can you maintain your units? And that's where we still are a bit today. So we have not yet evolved into real connected devices and advanced services that need to be delivered, but that is something that we need to do in the next step, and that is what is part of our roadmap right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Roel was at our Paris event, which was our first, and we talked quite a bit there about the journey of servitization and sort of the continuum, right? And so the phase you're at, I think, is a phase where organizations tend to reach a level of complacency because they understand the benefit of focusing more on service and really the opportunity of the end vision, which is to actually servitize. But then they achieve a certain level of success in really that incremental improvement type of thing, and then say, oh, great, well, you know, we've succeeded, so let's move on to this this next thing. And that goes back to the level of change we're really talking about, right? So it presents an opportunity for Munters. What are some of the aspects from the customer perspective that are making service more important or a bigger opportunity?
Yeah, you can clearly see that today in the markets, customers want more than a product. They want product with the services around it, and packaged. And they want to go into, moving capex to OPEX, lease concept, where it embeds the whole service. And they also want to have more than just a box and you repair it when it's fixed. They would like to have a sustainable outcome that you guarantee 99.x% of the time that thing is delivering what it needs. Customer wants to say, these are my requirements, and you just make sure they are fulfilled. So less downtimes, more guarantees, and even using technologies and softwares where you can certainly even influence their environments. If you have a view on their entire production process and you have sensors that are beyond your own device, you can do a lot of analysis in the customer environment. And one of the areas that we have, it's in the food industry. It's called food tech departments. They have sensors on the entire production from the egg up to a fillet of a chicken. And they can say, if you give more water or your air quality or your airflow is like this, what is the influence on the fillet that comes out in the end? Does it take longer? Is it becoming bigger, too big to produce? So they can pinpoint what is influencing your process. And we can do the same. If a door opens and there's a lot of external air coming in, you can say to customers, well, this is influencing your production. Why don't you have your deliveries at night as an example? Because we see the peaks in our units saying, oh, something is changing in the environment, making that I need to work harder, I use more energy, or I even can't guarantee the outcome performance anymore. So that's why we need to go. It's more than a box. It is things around the box that we need to deliver. And customers want this, and they want also fast response times. They want to avoid even technicians going on site. That's something that you specifically saw during COVID, where people were afraid of having foreigners coming into their environment. So they want different kind of ways to deliver service than you're doing traditionally today by sending out your technician with his parts and his screwdriver.
So I don't have I don't create models. Okay, we'll leave that to Tim Baines at the Advanced Services Group. But if I were to just make the continuum quite generic, right? So you start as product manufacturer, service as a cost center. Then you move to the phase of identifying more opportunity of service and its revenue contribution, and so putting more emphasis on it, which is really where you are today.
Yep.
Then you would move toward true servitization, which is you're not selling products and services, you are selling the outcome, okay? And then the point you brought up is a very good one, is that there really is a fourth phase of this journey for those who choose it, which is if you connect devices in the way you would need to servitize, you also, in certain industries or applications, often have access to information that your customers find a lot of value in. So this is where, you can bring that insight, data, knowledge into the value proposition to kind of achieve that trusted advisor, business partner type relationship. Okay, so let's talk about the point you made, which is maybe in the future of field service, we go into the field less, right? So during the very early points of COVID, Munters recognized the opportunity to deploy remote assistance, which is an augmented reality tool, because the realities were you had technicians that could not travel, et cetera. Now, this is something that had been on your future roadmap, so it had already been a consideration, but you recognize the opportunity to get right to that. So tell us a little bit about that journey and getting it deployed initially, and then we'll talk about how, now that travel is possible and things have normalized to a degree, what that means for that solution.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. So, like you say, I had been looking into remote management solution before, and I wanted to use this mainly internally. So we have like a third line support organization for our service technicians, and we thought, how can we have a better interaction with them, guiding them using mixed video, two signals being sent. And I've been looking into different solutions. And then in the World Conference in Boston from IFS, there was like a third solution that I saw, but we would be rolling it out at some point, smaller scale. It was not so urgent; it would come, and then COVID hit us. So I was in Italy when the first patient came on the cruise ship in Italy, and I was with my president, and we said, if this thing hits Europe, our Chinese technicians were already sitting at home; they could not travel anymore. We were like, yeah, how are we going to guarantee service to our customers? Because this preventive maintenance is really key in our units. Otherwise, they break down and you get problems in your production. So he said, why don't we roll that thing out that you have been looking for? Why don't you roll it out faster? And so I contacted IFS and I said, I saw this solution. I like it because it integrates with your field service management solution, meaning that if you have service calls and you would use this, the time you spend it, to whom you called, there would be a lot of registrations done from the video link that you put in. So I like this for a future concept. And so IFS was responding very positively to this. We got 20 licenses for like 2 weeks that we could test for free. We liked the solution. We gave it directly to our Italian engineers who were immediately stuck at home to start doing service with our customers. Then we bought the licenses, and I think within a couple of weeks we had rolled it out for 200 technicians worldwide. A very intuitive, easily to use solution it is. It contains already training packages inside the application. You don't need an app to be installed on the customer environment, so you can just use his web browser that he has on his phone, and just a simple tablet, something with a camera. You can use it and you can interact with your customer. We asked our technicians to train to use it before, so they started calling each other using the solution and playing a little bit with it. And then we organized like 7 training sessions where they could dial into. Came in with concrete questions because they had been playing with the system. And so within 2 weeks, we had rolled it out for 200 technicians in 15 countries.
So the need for change management is minimized when there is no option for business as usual, right? And it was, impressive that you were able to recognize the need, move quickly, get it in place, and that helped you with business continuity during those lockdowns. But now that things have changed to be, somewhat more normal, it gives you the opportunity and/or challenge of looking at how does the opportunity for remote service fit into the broader service delivery strategy. So what are your thoughts on that today?
First I need to say we saw a significant reduction in the usage of the system because our technicians and our customers still like you to go on site. Often they have this relationship as well, so it's not just anybody who is picking up the phone and doing this remote session with your customer. And in the end, technicians will always have to go on site. Will always have to do field interventions, commissionings, and trusted advisor, as you mentioned, customers still like this. But it doesn't mean that this is not a solution that you can use and still use for the future. You need to have a good business model behind it. It's what we talked about earlier today. You can't sell, we deliver remote management. You need to sell a response commitment. You need to sell a fast response commitment, proper diagnose, faster potential resolution. So you need to have something behind it, an offering and a usage behind it. So we're building up our 24/7 service towards customers. And that will be, for me, twofold. It is connected units in the future where you can interact with the unit directly. It sends you an alarm or an alert, and you do something with the unit directly. Or you use a customer that calls you at night and is standing in front of that device, and you do either your diagnose, help him maybe do certain things. So that is something that I see definitely as a case, a business case that and an offering for customers. Also, when you go into outcome-based services and you want to reduce that downtime, you cannot permit yourself to send a technician who goes on site, maybe has to travel for 2 hours, does a diagnose, comes back, orders a part, goes for a second time to fix it. You don't have that luxury anymore at that time. So you really need to have solutions that can help you reduce the downtime. And don't forget, at the same time, that technician that maybe does this one visit during the day, if he's on duty to do remote management, he can maybe serve 20 customers that day. Yeah? So from a value proposition for your customers, you have a different model.
Yeah.
Look at it also for warranty claims. Yeah? Warranty claims, it's a pure cost. So again, if you need to send a technician, you spend the time, you spend the costs. We now impose actually that you, when a customer comes with a claim, the first thing we will do is set up this remote session. So we will diagnose with him before we really say, okay, yeah, that's a potential claim, and we continue further with our root cause analysis and all these things. And second, the last thing is internally we use it. Our technicians still use it between each other. The third line support is still using it. They haven't stopped using it. So there is definitely use, but I can feel that my technicians, they still like the interaction with their customers on site rather than doing the remote sessions.
Yeah. And I think part of the resistance around remote service is that people think remote only instead of remote first, right? And so it's interesting if you go back to the outside in view and putting the customer first, you know, having these capabilities and making sure that, you know, if it's a quick and easy resolution, they're not waiting 2 hours or 4 hours for someone to arrive just to flip a switch or what have you. And or when you do send someone on site, they know what they're going for, right? So they can make sure that they're achieving resolution the first time. So what's interesting is when you're at the phase of this continuum that you're at, it is tricky because there's a focus on service. You've achieved some good results in terms of improving service revenue, but you haven't yet servitized, okay? And so from a customer perspective, a lot of times that service is still perceived as, you know, billable hours, FaceTime, time in person, right? When you servitize, the potential for self-service and remote service increase exponentially in the sense of you're no longer having to justify the reduction of cost of service to your customers because you're only responsible for the outcome, right? And so it's kind of the difference between that phase and the next and the role that remote service can play are pretty significant. Now, that being said, the one other point that I do see a lot of people having success with is using it for training of new technicians, right? So we haven't talked about this a lot today, but in most of the cities that we've been to, most of the conversations I have, you know, there are real challenges in recruiting and hiring and retaining frontline workers. And so using remote assistance, augmented reality as a way to have, you know, one very experienced technician mentoring 5 or 6 or whatever new technicians in the field allows you to speed their time to value when they come on board. So there are some really strong uses. It's just a matter of, you know, like we talked about, the technology is here, the business model and everything else is here. And so when you have the capability, but that's not yet connected to your go-to-market strategy, you know, that's where some of that friction comes into play. Okay, so we talked earlier about people, process, technology. So in your position, you are responsible for all three, right? Which do you find the most challenging?
The people one is the most important one to start with. Today, we are running an initiative inside Munters where we look into the entire end-to-end process and the systems that need to support that end-to-end process. So it's not just in the services organization, it is throughout the entire organization. It's a huge project, but we defined that if we want to move into that next stage for servitization, the basics needs to be in place. You need to have a steady field force, you need to have really good processes, and you need to have the systems and the technology to support your way of working. And systems is not one, it's not one ERP that does it all, you need to integrate it all. So technology is amazing, but bringing it all together and having it support your entire end-to-end process is a challenge. We've been busy with this for 2 years now. There's 250 people working on that project. We're about to start a pilot in end of January. So all three are a challenge, but the people are the most important one. And we've discussed it already all day long. If you don't have the buy-in, if you don't include the users in this process, get their business requirements, help them see what the testing, the end user testing, change management, the communication. If you don't do these things, then you can have the brilliant technology and the best process. If they don't understand why and what it brings for them, they will not use it, and you will fail in such a project.
Yeah.
So for me, people are the most important ones.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you provide as your biggest lesson learned?
I wanted to say that change management, and I think it's something that is very cumbersome today in Munters also, because the team is working so hard on trying to get this thing to work that I think they forget about the communication, they forget about the inclusion. Another thing I want to say is break it into pieces. If you have a long-term vision like servitization, and it's a lot of things together, it's your process, your system, how do you connect your devices, what is the customer value you want to bring for it, it's a lot of things. You need to chunk that down and work in sprints and clear, agile way, like we said before, because if you want to do it all, you're bound to fail as well. So break it down and make sure you communicate properly and do your proper change management.
Sounds so easy when you summarize it.
Yeah, it is.
All right, guys, any questions for Roel?
What is your biggest challenge, do you think, going into servitization?
You know, we've been talking for 5 years to connect our units, and none of them are connected. So, so I think the problem is a little bit the silos that we were working in. We had I analyzed 20 initiatives that started in local organizations to say, how do I connect our units? So what are the sensors? Where should we put them? And they're all really good, but they were like local little things that were done. They form a good base for what we want to do now. So we're about to start the digitalization and connectivity. We call it digital services project. And this time we're going to try to do it right. A bit like the concept you've set up, where you bring different departments together and stakeholders together. You don't use only internal resources that have been in the company for a long time, but you bring in new blood with new ideas. You have a longer-term vision of what it could be, but you break it down into pieces to say, okay, this and this, and it doesn't need to be low-hanging fruits. Just what is it we can really do? What could bring benefit and value? And then this communication. So that, for me, is key to make it happen, so to go to this next stage. And that's where we are not today.
I was going to say, too, the customer connectivity that's required. One of the challenges I see is, Barrett, it goes back to your point of bringing in sales and marketing to the conversation, because what happens is you're going to customers saying, we need connectivity. And they're saying, no, it's our data. So it's leading with the need, not the value to them, right? So it isn't about the value it brings you to, reduce truck rolls, because they don't care. But if you can ask the question framed in how it will help them, right? What capability it gives you to serve them better. I'm not saying it's an easy fix, but I think that's the starting point of getting to a different response.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that session from Roel. You can find more, including the earlier episodes that he was featured on, by visiting us at futureoffieldservice.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn as well as Twitter at the Future of FS. The Future of Field Service podcast is published in partnership with IFS. You can learn more at ifs.com. As always, thank you for listening.